have a problem now
Okay,
because we've
so
got 75 pounds of information,
right,
and uh, who gets to decide what goes into that 75 pounds of scripture?
right, right.
Who decided that over there in the north of England?
Indeed. Okay. So what we know is that by the time they're making the 75-pound version, all of
Mm,
these books have been used in, oh yes, you said the liturgy over the centuries. I mean, this is the 7th or 8th century. It's 700 800 years after Christ, right? It's
mm,
AD, right? So in order
shepherd time.
shepherd time,
Yeah.
in order to understand why these particular books end up in that 75-pound volume, we have to do a lot of textual history. And
Mm,
this is when, when people are talking about, it's like, could we have Christianity without Paul? Well, what the interesting thing is, the early Christians seem to have been quoting Paul, so they thought he was necessary. But the chicken and egg problem is, if you're claiming that it's only when these books get put together in the 75-pound version complete that we know exactly what the Bible is. How was there even Christianity ever before that? How was Christianity not invented? This is going to get clipped out and scared around the bear world. Um, Invented by monks in northern England in the 7th or 8th century. How would we know? How do we know what books belong? So what
okay.
get make some let's just play. This is what I do in class, right? And so how would we figure out why these monks in the 7th or 8th century decided that these were the books that belong in this giant book that they're going to make to send back down to Rome.
Hmm. Well, did they just draw straws?
to hear some people talk, I mean, one version, and this is the usual, I swear Bart Ehrman is everywhere in these conversations, I think, because he made a lot of, interestingly, videos or podcasts. I mean, there's a sort of, or I'm certain that most of the people making these arguments about how Constantine invented the Bible, and they're always quoting Bart Ehrman, my guess is they're not reading his books, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're, because Ehrman, I know he did a bunch of courses for the teaching company, so there's a lot of audio out there. There's a lot of audio airmen out there. Airman. We'll do an Owen reading of these names. He's the airman. It's Ehrman, but he's the airman, constantly talking about how Constantine. I've gone into Owen mode. Constantly talking about how Constantine invented the Bible. Hard. You guys have no idea how frustrating this is. It's really bad.
It's
Okay.
a test of patience, I can tell you.
Oh.
Um, so Constantine comes along, and this assertion is that he invents the Bible. Well, when was he supposed to have done that?
Sometime in the 4th century, right? So after the Council of
Mm-hmm.
Nicaea, everybody's been posting just recently about the Council of Nicaea and
Yes,
Nicholas
yes.
punching Arius out, yeah, at the Council of Nicaea. So one version of things is, oh well, the emperor tells everybody what books belong in the Bible,
Yeah.
which then makes,
Which would make it a political book.
exactly, makes it a completely political book.
Mm-hmm.
Another version is, okay, so that we have this story that Constantine tells everybody what belongs in the Bible, which is not true. I mean, the first council, well, the Council of Trent makes an official list of the books that belong in the Bible, but in fact, that's the first time that problem came up in quite that form, because they're printing them and they have to know which books to include in the printed Bible. And of course, by this time in the 16th century, the Protestants have decided that certain of the books that would appear in that, I'm showing the Ezra image with the little shelves, right? Some of the books that appear on those shelves in the Ezra collection are not included by the Protestants in their collection, even though, in fact, they're all in the oldest complete copy of the Bible we have. So apparently the Protestants can figure out which ones to leave out, even though in the oldest and largest, I think it may be the largest, the 75-pound copy of the books, the monks in the 7th or 8th centuries thought they belonged. I mean, these are things like some of the wisdom books, very important for the devotion to Mary and so forth,
Hmm.
Ecclesiasticus and things. Oh, you're still there, thank God.
I'm here. I'm
Yeah.
here.
Okay, so
I'll just interrupt you
keep
occasionally so the
interrupting me
microphone
because
doesn't turn
otherwise your
itself off.
Skype falls asleep.
Um, all right, so Protestants wanted to lose a few pounds.
Maybe that's it. They decided to give the book's too fat.
Tired of lugging it around all the time. Um, so okay, so that's 16th century Protestants lose a few pounds. You've got the Northern England monks that are compiling this enormous book in, what did you say, 8th century?
Yeah, it's during Abbot Chelfrith's reign, so 689 to 716, and he dies on the way
Okay,
down south to take the book to the Pope. So it has to, finished by, they finish it in 715 or so, 716.
okay. But then everyone credits Constantine around 400 AD with making this Bible, which is uh, framed in that way then as a political book and not a church book.
Well, interestingly, this book
So,
doesn't. This book says nothing about it being Constantine that did it. There's
so why all the rumors about Constantine being the one who compiled it?
because oh golly, I'm blanking. Eusebius, who writes the life of Constantine, says somewhere that Constantine ordered that there would be multiple copies of the Bible made or the scriptures made and sent out. And everybody is, and I think Ehrman has created that into a Constantine ordered 50 copies of the Bible, and that's when it was established as the Bible. Remembering that we
Okay.
don't have any of those books because this is the oldest of the complete ones in Latin.
Mm.
In fact, I mean, what this book says, this book itself credits Jerome for knowing which are the four gospels that should be included. It also has a number of images that show different versions of. I didn't put these in the slides. Different versions of what the subsets of the Bible is: the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Mosaic books, the prophets, and so forth. And
Mm.
that all of the discussion in this book itself, the Codex Amiatinus, is about the fathers, right? It's Jerome and Augustine and there is a pope mentioned, but it's Hilaris and Eusebius of Caesarea. So this book doesn't apparently know that it's that Constantine told them which books belonged in it.
Okay. So it's not Constantine.
Well, not according
So
to the
at the
oldest
time,
copy that we have.
okay. I'm trying to wrap my head around this because essentially the the church that were compiling the scriptures at this time were completely apostolic Catholic. Yes?
Well, yes, but I think maybe our audience won't necessarily know what that means.
Can you define it?
Well,
Because I get a lot of slack over using that term, but
I think it's so there is an image of the church that it's founded by the missions of the various apostles, and in fact,
mm,
in the 7th and 8th century, there's books made in Spain that are quite popular. Our Spanish element that have maps showing the where the apostles went to preach.
hmm
And so the English Church is not in fact an apostolic church. It's papal in the sense that Pope Gregory the Great sent mission from Rome to Kent, and therefore, in fact, what the English Church is very Gregorian in the sense that they recognize that they were missionized through Gregory. But the Mediterranean is, of course, missionized by the 12 apostles, and Spain, for example, is Saint James and Matthew. Apparently, well, the Egypt is sometimes Matthew, but also sometimes Mark. Thomas is said to have gone to India, right? So that they
yes.
spread the tradition around the ancient world.
So there was this is all right. So this is where I want to ask you. So when the apostles are walking around to spread the tradition, they're not carrying the book. They're not
Nope.
holding that Bible that you've just held up in your hand
Nope.
and walking around with it and flicking through pages and saying, "Look, here it is. It's written here."
Nope.
Because at the time, there's still
There's no books. Oh my gosh. Okay, and now we get into
what are we gonna do without books?
I don't know. I mean, we get instantaneously into this problem of, okay, so there in the early spread of Christianity, there's nobody walking around with 75-pound books.
Okay. So what are they walking around with?
Their mouths.
Ah.
Their memories.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're in the, okay, so I do have, my next image is in fact the oldest scrap that we have of a scriptural text, that of these texts that end up in that big fancy fat book. The oldest scraps that we have of that are on these papyri, and it's very easy. You can find them out on Wikipedia because all you have to do is look at biblical manuscripts. And these are the oldest scraps that we have. The one I'm showing right now is a scrap from St. John's Gospel, chapter 18, verses 31 through 33 on one side, 37 through 30. It's not numbered or labeled or anything, right? This is a papyrus scrap, probably from a codex, so not a scroll, but from a what we think of as a book now, probably from the 2nd century. This is the absolutely oldest copy of anything that we have from the New Testament. It's the Gospel of John, and it's 2nd century. The next one I have, I just picked it's like on Wikipedia, and these are the oldest ones. This one is a papyrus scrap, probably a little later, 2nd, 3rd century. It's from a letter of Paul, 2 Corinthians, including chapter 11 through chapter 12. Okay, and my third example is it's a larger book. It has more text in it. P45, if you guys are playing with which papyri these are. This one is showing you the Gospel of Mark. It's around mid-3rd century, so 250. Earlier than Constantine, so there you go.
Okay.
But much later,
right, so
hundreds of years after the death of Christ, death and resurrection, right? So basically it's all made up, right? Somebody in the 2nd or 3rd century invented Christianity, because that's when we have the oldest scraps of writing.
Well, there's two things now. Either it doesn't exist because it wasn't written down immediately, or the culture back then wasn't as concerned with having things written as they were concerned with speaking things to communicate them.
Okay, so yes, this hold that thought, right? The culture. The next thing someone will say was, "Oh, but we know ancient Rome, right? They're a very literate culture that I think we've talked about this before in the McLuhan sense. The Roman Empire exists with the power that it does because of papyrus like these. These are not parchment like the Codex Amiatinus is skins. These are papyrus. So the Roman Empire exists with the power that it does because, one, they can carve writing onto stone monuments, old style, make your power known because you're, as ruler, carve your name into a rock. Or you extend your power because you have roads and you have shipping and you can send messages on papyrus.